Hi, this is Norman Goh and you're listening to BMI Bicara Minggu Ini. Malaysia's leading independent news portal Malaysiakini was handed a hefty RM500,000 fine after they were found to be in contempt of court by the Federal Court on February 19. The penalty was more than a double fine prosecutors had sought. The highest court of the country ruled that Malaysiakini was guilty of contempt over 5 comments posted by readers on its website last year, saying that it was responsible for the dissemination of remarks deemed to have undermined the system of justice in the country. The editor-in-chief and co-founder Stephen Gan was found not guilty of the charges. This is a landmark decision by the Malaysian courts, if not the first to be tried directly in a federal court. Contrary to the usual legal proceedings, how will this affect the future of media landscape in Malaysia, and how will newsrooms operate after this? In this episode, I speak to Premesh Chandran, CEO and co-founder of Malaysiakini, to tell us more. Alright, Prem, thanks for joining me. Despite the short notice yesterday, I messaged you late at night. So, first of all, let's look at the situation yesterday. It came after 1 year since the last trial, and then it was postponed due to MCO and all that. So the heavy-handedness of the court verdict of RM500,000 came to a shock to many Malaysians, I think even yourself, and generally many in media community around the world. So what is your take about this, and how that will spell to the press freedom and freedom of expression as a whole in Malaysia?
Hi, Norman. Thanks for having me on air. Yes, I think definitely the quantum of fine was, far above what we would have expected. We've tried our best to cooperate with the courts. We don't condone the comments made on Malaysiakini. We really want to make this work for everyone. And so we felt that the fine, the amount quantum of fine, was extremely disproportionate to whatever has happened. Also keeping in mind that you see such comments happening in all types of Facebook pages and Twitter pages and etc. We just look at even the Prime Minister Mohidin's page or Najib's page or any political leader, right? You see very harsh comments going on. So we really did not expect such a fine. But it was really lovely to see Malaysians coming out from all walks of life, throwing the support behind Malaysiakini and being able to raise RM500,000 in 4 hours, on a time when a lot of people are suffering financial pain due to the pandemic, lost jobs, worries of their own. It was really heartwarming and very, very generous of the Malaysian public.
So what happened yesterday? So what went through your mind when the verdict was handed down? Were you expecting the worst yesterday?
I think, as I started to read the verdict, we could get a sense of where it was headed. That they were not going after Stephen, and they were basically questioning the company, and we can understand that. Obviously, there's a majority judgment and a minority judgment which can be read and explained. So when we in mitigation, after we found out the verdict, our lawyer said, look, fine of 20,000-30,000 would be reasonable. And the prosecution asked for 200,000, which I thought was already very high. And I expected, maybe a verdict somewhere in between those two amounts. But I felt 500,000 was really, really going overboard. And it kind of hurt. It's like, why take such a position? I felt that the judiciary could be more constructive about this. It's the first time this sort of case is being discussed. There's got huge ramifications. They could have taken an approach to say that, Malaysiakini, we want you to come back with a plan. How are you going to manage the comment section? What are you going to do about this? Right? Tell us how you're going to improve this and make sure it does not happen again. So that would have been a much more constructive approach to take.
And it's not like Malaysiakini did not do anything to address the issue. First of all, when we look at the facts of the case, the comments were taken down within 12 minutes. It's not that Malaysiakini did not take down and leave it for a few hours. That did not happen. But Malaysiakini the company the publication has already addressed the issue. But looking at this, it is really alarming, and of course we will not go to a point where we're going to be cited for contempt of court again, lah. But it is really really mind blowing to see the courts taking such stance.
Yes, definitely. I think that the courts need to relook at this case and understand the broader implications of this, which many organizations have voiced out, including parties like UMNO and others have also voiced out their concerns. The Chinese Media Association has put up statements, etc. So it's got really really wide implications, and for us the CMA, the Communication and Multimedia Act, clearly defined the operations of an online forum, where it defines some sort of flag and take down as the appropriate action, which we have been trying to follow. Keep in mind, Norman, that when we launched the comment section, a while back, it was a big dilemma for us as well. It was not an easy decision to take. There are many comments there which are critical of Malaysiakini, critical of many people, right? We acknowledge that, so there's a very diverse opinions in those comments. So how do we create a forum which allows people to comment, at the same time, try to make them to be more responsible for their comments? We don't condone at all comments that are vile, which are defamatory, which cast aspersions on the judiciary. We are not there to condone such comments at all. We want people to comment responsibility, but there will always be a few bad hats that that go beyond what is appropriate.
There will be the naughty ones who usually spice things up. That's the usual part.
Yeah. So it's really a question of how do we manage that and how do we improve it so that we encourage responsible commenting and discourage irresponsible comments and defamatory comments.
That I will touch on. There are quite a number of very popular community forums in Malaysia. I mean, they're really well known. These are going to have a very, very deep ramifications of what's going to happen next. Look at the whole situation yesterday. It was, I was there. I was on my phone for about 5 hours, tweeting, updating, and everything. Malaysiakini raised more than 500,000. I think right now, as of now, is nearly 700,000 now. In
Yes.
less than 5 hours. There was 500,000 in less than 5 hours. That's equivalent to about nearly 125,000 per hour, breaking the previous record of 350,000 in 11 days. And then you mentioned earlier 1.7 million in 1 year for the BRIC project. So how do you feel about this overwhelming support from many Malaysians? Do you think, I also tweeted yesterday, this is actually a way how Malaysians show their protests over what has been handed down? I think what has been handed down was really heavy. It was a heavy-handedness by the Supreme Court.
Yes, I think that Malaysians, we do want change, but we also want peaceful change. As we saw in 2018, Malaysians had the courage to make a change using the ballot box. There was no violence. We adhered to the rules. So Malaysians do want that. We want a better country. We want to move forward. We want justice. We want a sense of equality. But we're doing it in the best way we can. We don't want violence. We don't want, crazy things to happen, right? We are trying to speak up in the best way we can so that the powers that be take cognizance of the situation and make the necessary changes. But I get a sense of, people are being tired. People are becoming very cynical. People are fatigued. So it's high time that the powers that be listen to the concerns of the everyday rakyat and address this. And in the sense that the judiciary has got a very key role to play to make sure that justice is upheld, that those who commit crimes are put away, and those who are trying to make the change need the room to make the change happen. And that's what I see how justice needs to move forward.
This kind of reminded me of one of the quotes where, speaking to quite a number of lawyer friends, that justice need to be seen and felt, not just read. Justice need to be, it has to resonate with the people. And while we're looking at the political landscape itself, we saw that support from politicians from both sides, coming from DAP, PKR, PH, to name a few, and even those in UMNO have also contributed to support the Media Defence Fund. Were you surprised with the support given, with the change of, Jing Huat has really pointed out very well this morning when he was commenting on Mat Hassan's comments about, a breath of fresh air coming from UMNO about media freedom.
Definitely, I think I was very pleasantly surprised that UMNO has taken a quite a progressive position. I think that now that they are out of power, or at least on the sidelines of power, there's a more reckoning the importance of press freedom. I think something similar happened to Tun Mahathir after he stepped down from being prime minister, and suddenly he found that despite being in power for 22 years, he was being sidelined by the Badawi administration, and his voice was not being heard. And similarly, he came to Malaysiakini and we gave him space for an interview to discuss his ideas and opinions. And similarly, when Najib Razak lost power after 2018 defeat, he also came to Malaysiakini and we also gave him an interview to explain his point of view on many issues.
Yeah, that's why they got a lot of supporters getting riled out of why Malaysiakini giving them spaces.
Yeah. So it's important to understand that, we are trying to give space to all sides. Whether they are in power, opposition or government, or the readers. They need to have their say. And we need to listen up to what people are saying, whether we agree or disagree. There are many comments that I firmly disagree with, but we need to give them the space. So I'm pleasantly surprised, and I hope that UMNO and other parties in power will now understand that today you can be in power and control the media, but tomorrow you may not be in power. So as we have changes of governments, it's more essential that the institutions of the state, whether it's the judiciary, the media, the police, they become more independent so they can serve all, not just those who are, in power and in control of those institutions.
So basically, all the years of how Malaysiakini with many of the other media practitioners have really worked hard about changing the perspective of media. I think this could actually spell a very positive outcome in future. Whomever takes power will actually respect the independence of the media. So going back on this case, though, Malaysiakini has quite a long history of brush with the authorities, bringing the case to the courts, even civil suits, defamation, and all that. Now, how different was this case compared to the cases where Malaysiakini faced before, like Raub, the case of the Malaysiakini versus Home Affairs Ministry over the license? Now, how different in this time and compared to previous ones?
Well, this was very different in the sense that, it went straight to the federal court. 7 top judges of the country presiding over the issue, no room to appeal on an issue which has huge precedence, not just for the publishing industry, but for the rakyat as a whole who use social media to comment. So this was a very pivotal case. This was not a run-of-the-mill case that we've handled in the past. There was a possibility that Stephen would be jailed, and we appreciate the fact that he was found not guilty and on this charge. So it was a high pressure case. So we felt it, and we were ready to manage it. And also not because of something that we have deliberately published. I think in previous cases, it was articles that, we have published that we've taken responsibility for. But these are, in a way, our comments by our readers. So I think that it was a huge concern, and you can see there have been global reportage on this issue. So this is something that very much concerned us. But I think, we've now gone past it, and now we need to move forward.
I think to make the note to the listeners as well, the recent court case involving Malaysiakini is not about Malaysiakini's reporting. It's not about what the journalists have published, has reported, or there's nothing wrong with the reporting. This is related to the 5 comments made by the subscribers, of which Malaysiakini has immediately taken out from publishing it. So, when there's a changed government last year, the government promised to defend press freedom. The minister himself, Saifuddin Abdullah, promised to defend press freedom. But this verdict itself will send a chilling effect on freedom of expression, also on press freedom. Media Council is being stalled. We don't know where it is right now. Now, in spite of these difficulties and challenges on media industry, what future holds for independent media like Malaysiakini?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Media Council. As you know, that I'm chair of the Pro Tem Committee. This has been a process for more than a year. But since the new government has taken over, the minister has not been forthcoming in terms of a clear position on the Media Council and actually moving it forward. But why we actually want a Media Council is precisely about these sort of issues. The media is changing, the demands of people are changing, the industry's revenue models are changing. You got to deal with Facebook and Google. And it's very critical that the media comes together as a collective body, both the publishers as well as the audience, and put forward ideas. How do we want, new regulations, right? How do we develop a new standards? How do we make sure the industry is sustainable? Major media are hemorrhaging. They're losing staff. They're retrenching staff by the day. So it's very critical that the media comes together and works with the government to develop new standards and new way to approach matters. This could have avoided, this whole case that we have today. The case could have been referred to a media council. The media council could have deliberated on it and come up with saying, well, okay, these were the offenses, but this is the way forward in terms of, managing comments of readers. But currently, there's no avenue for constructive dialogue, a constructive discussion.
I think you're right
and this
to
is
point
what
out
we,
that the need for media council to actually come out with a code of conduct, and it also to protect the professionalism of the newsrooms itself, for journalists themselves. That at the end of the day, the government need not to regulate news anymore. What the government need is to support, rather than put their hands dirty in trying to control the press.
Exactly. I think they need to recognize that the media is not for or against any political party. That is our duty to ask the tough questions. When you're in power, we will be asking the tough questions. But it's not personal. It's about what the people are concerned about, right? They want justice. They want fairness. They are worried, and we will ask those questions about corruption, about abuses of power. But it's not personal. And those who choose to be in power need to be ready for those questions, ready for that scrutiny. And I think today even the judiciary needs to be ready for more scrutiny. There have been allegations being brought up against the judiciary, and they need to be clear how are they going to answer those questions.
I remember reading one of the majority judgments is that judiciary does not have a space to actually answer criticisms and all that, and that's why one of the reasons was actually putting to penalize, become punitive in the area to prevent criticisms that may affect the image of the judiciary. Then again, judiciary being one part of the three main branches of the democratic institution, that is also not free from criticisms from the people again. So looking forward, how will this spell for the future of Malaysian media landscape? What would you call on the lawmakers, the policymakers, our MPs in amending our laws so that, they don't need to go through what Malaysiakini had to go through again?
I think for immediately, the lawmakers need to look at the Evidence Act, the amendments made, 114A, and its now implications of how it's been interpreted by the courts. I think that immediately needs attention. They needs to have a law of on contempt. Who can be held on contempt? How can contempt happen? This needs to be properly defined. What are the fines for contempt? What's the sense of justice? How can we look at what fines need to be laid out when someone is found in contempt? I think these are the immediate reactions, because we now have very far-reaching interpretation by the highest court, which has very, very far-reaching implications. That needs to be immediate action. But I would also ask the lawmakers to seriously consider the idea of a media council. To create a level playing field where media can dialogue with the authorities and work out solutions. We are not saying that, we are all invincible. We're not saying that we've got everything right. We acknowledge that there are many things that media can do better as well. We also need to be responsible with what we do. I totally agree with that. But there needs to be a structure put in place where these discussions and these debates and constructive ideas can be developed so that we can all progress together. The country needs a free media, without which there is going to be chaos. So I urge lawmakers to urgently move forward on this front.
Looking at the current situation, also what happened in Australia, where there's a total media blackout, and what happens between the Australian government and Facebook, media giants like Facebook, over that Facebook, social media giants like Facebook and Google should pay news publishers. I think sooner or later it may come to our shores. And I would like to ask your opinion. How would that actually be happening one day in our country like that?
There has been the discussion among the media industry about how we should move forward with these big tech companies. We understand that they bring many benefits. At the same time, we have many concerns. Media has always relied on advertising business model, and now this model has been taken away from media. So is it a situation where we have to just move business models and not rely on advertising? Malaysiakini itself has a subscription system. Would that work? Or is it that we need a bigger share of advertising revenue, which is currently being taken by some of these global giants? It's a big debate. I don't think there's a simple solution. I don't think there is a blanket silver bullet. But whether it's the tech players or the industry or the government, we need to sit around and try to work out solutions, right? How can we move forward in the best way?
All right. So that's all for today. And thank you so much, Prem, for joining me.
Thanks, Norman. Thanks for having me. All the best.
Thank you.
You're listening to Bicara Minggu Ini, uncovering current affairs and politics. And you can listen to the stories and interviews on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you can find podcasts. For more updates and stories, if you have any suggestions, you can tweet to me at I'm Nongor. Thank you for listening.